Wow, we've made it. We all made it to our first live stream on Twitter and Rumble. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the DD Geopolitics podcast. I'm so excited. We have SL and BlueBird again with me and Lydia. How are you guys today?
Awesome.
Both joining us from Bangalore, India.
Yes.
Real quick, so if I could ask all the listeners a really quick favor. Please like the stream, and the easiest way to support us without spending anything is to subscribe on Rumble, Twitter, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever it is, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Or you can go to ddgeopolitics.com, and that will list all links to all platforms. Hi, Lydia. How are you back in your swamp from a little vacation?
I am great. I have conquered my mic. It's been a while, so I might be a little bit rusty, but I'm very, very excited because we're going to talk about India and all things. And because, it's people have a lot of questions about India in the chat all the time.
Oh, God. Well, why don't you ask one?
Well, I kind of want to, it's not so much a question, but it's more of I guess you could say a comment. I think it was yesterday when we had a person in our chat say, I am just as confused about life as I am about India's foreign policy.
I think they were Indian.
Yes, that's the best part. And so I feel like this is a great way to start us off.
Why do you guys think that India's foreign policy is so hard for outsiders to kind of make sense of?
SL, you want to go first? Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so here's the thing. So nobody understands India's foreign policy because, but nobody in India knows geopolitics. It sounds bad. It sounds bad, but it's true. We live in a very, very complex world. But if you look at the mainstream media in India, it's like full of sensationalism, hyperbole, jingoism, terrible. And if you look at think tanks in India, they don't think, okay? They just repeat the US propaganda. And a lot of them are actually funded by the US governments and Bill Gates Foundation and so on. But so here is the good news, I think. So it's going to change very rapidly. The drama with Canada, I think it's going to be a wake-up call. And a lot of people are slowly will start to understand exactly how the world works. So it's going to be a baptism by fire, as they say, over the next year or two.
Well, BlueBird, would you say that the recent rift between India and Canada is surprising at all?
It's a little surprising to me. The way I see it is that the US foreign policy makers, for some weird reason, likes to blackmail people a lot. Like how you get you on your side is through blackmail. So over the last year, you could see certain instances that they have used, which to me, it seems like a blackmail to India. For example, the Hindenburg report against one of the major Indian oligarchs who has very close relationship with Modi was a blackmail. So you can see it. You can see it like with the BBC documentary. You can see it again with the statements which have been made by Justin Trudeau. So it's to me, it seems like a plain blackmail. The question is, will India succumb to this blackmail and change its long tradition of independent foreign policy? That's the real question. Whether it's yes or no, personally, I think it will try to mandeer through the situation as much as possible, but at one point it might be forced to make a choice. And at that time, I think India might pick the West, because it might, because the Indian ruling class is heavily dependent upon Western foreign capital and on international finance capital. They are absolute compradors. They do not have revolutionary potential or anything forming like an independent, even an independently industrializing India. They don't have the ability to do that. So personally, I think they might succumb to it at one stage, but they will try to mandeer through the whole process as much as possible. That's what I think.
What do you guys think about the conspiracy theories behind Trudeau's jet being stuck in India? I've heard quite a few good ones. I heard one that he was caught with cocaine on board, and so the Indians grounded the jet. But what do you guys think that there was? I don't think there was any malicious intent behind it. I think that the jet was just grounded and that was it. But so, because that happens, and then Trudeau kind of goes on the offensive and people kind of want to make a connection. And I don't know. Do you guys think there is
I
one
think
there?
this is where the Indian media is like really good at, to build up conjectures here and there. That's what they love doing. It's all the drama that they love. So I don't think there's anything more than that. SL, if you think otherwise, please.
Well, how do you guys think the G20 went in general?
Say it again.
How do you think the G20 went in general? You guys hosted it. It was a really big deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the photo ops and the PR stuff, I would say G20 was a big success for Modi and for India. But in terms of the concrete things, so what was accomplished, there was nothing, So like there are just these the proposals and a lot of white papers and some good ideas. Like for example, there was one idea where India and the U.S. are going to get together, and they're going to build the digital the infrastructure in poor countries, like cell phone payments, the mobile payments, and so on. So it sounds good. So we just have to see how it goes. The other one about the India, Europe, the Middle East corridor is just like a crazy idea, because if you look at the trade, India only accounts for like 2% of Europe's trade. So you don't need to go and build a railway for 2,500 kilometers in the desert to send the ship to Europe. It doesn't make sense. So that that project is really about bringing Saudi Arabia and the Israelis together. And then they just added India to the project's name.
I don't think there's anything more to be said on that. We are thinking about bypassing the Suez Canal.
I saw that, and I saw like an animated video of how that would go. And I used to work in logistics, and I was just like, oh no, that looks so bad. That looks terrible. So it was like, you guys are really going to shoot yourselves in the foot this badly just to circumvent. I mean, it just seems like another money pit. Lydia, what did you think about the G20?
Well, I think it was definitely better than the one that we had last year from the Russian perspective, I guess, because last year it was a little bit of a mess. I felt like everyone was a little bit nervous here about what was going to happen, if there were going to be any fights, anything like that. But I think this year the tone was very different. And I think that more than anything, it was pretty clear that a lot more countries are willing to assert themselves as independent. They don't really want to just simply do what the West wants them to do. They want things for themselves. They want to, yeah, basically that's it. And so I thought it was just very interesting to compare. And obviously, when I see the Western leaders being frustrated with the results, that tells me that we're probably doing something right.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, when you're getting criticized, of course you're doing. Speaking of being criticized, the name change that isn't really a name change.
Oh, that is the topic. I'm telling you, I'm kind of, just so that you understand, I'm someone who's in the chat a lot, so I'm kind of, with the people, mingling, gathering opinions. That's actually something that people have very strong opinions about. Not that they dislike it, but they just don't really understand why the new name, what it means. How do the people in India feel about it? Maybe you could tell us more, because we don't know.
I mean, the name has always been there in the constitution to some. I mean, so it's not like a technical name change. Personally, I prefer India because it's more encompassing. Like it's the entire subcontinent, right? And it sounds nice. It's not really a. I mean, I don't know if you can really call it a colonial name. It's the Sindhu River later, over a period of time became Persian to Greek, and then it became Indus, India. But I prefer India. I think a lot of people who support uh, Modi kind of are attracted to the title of Bharat. It personally, I don't connect with it from uh, where I come from South India. Not many people really connect with it, but it's always been an official name, so it's not really a change. But some people really like it, I guess. SL, you want to go?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you on that, So this is a classic example of just, waste of time, okay? They change the name of the streets, they change the name of the statues, they change the name of the cities. What is the point? There are like bigger things to worry about. These guys, they cannot, provide electricity, they cannot build roads, they cannot, make manufacturing plants. The youth unemployment rate in India is 45%, and they have no solution, okay? But they're going to change the name of the country.
That'll solve
My
it.
God.
That's the solution.
Somebody just bang me on the head with like a hammer,
I also think that it was an easily exploitable thing, right? It was like, ooh, India's going to change their name. Now they're going further from the West. And everyone was like, this has always been part of Indian history. Like it was like a thing that was like kind of leached onto. And then, nobody would have even known about it had the West not like reported on it in the news. That's the only reason why our Telegram chatters even knew. They use Bharat in a lot of documentation, so it was kind of funny. That was like, oh, they're going to make a big deal out of this and show that India is turning away from the West, and then the plane incident, and then Trudeau comes out, and I was like, it was kind of like a little domino effect of like, how can we alienate India right now?
Exactly. People made. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I just wanted to say that I personally think that people made a bigger deal out of it than it really is. And just looking from the outside in, whatever a country wants to call itself, it's it's their business. And also kind of to play the devil's advocate in the sense that maybe the name doesn't change anything, but then also to some people it might, if it gives them some sense of, I don't know, just more of a national identity, I guess, that they would prefer. Maybe that's a good thing for society. I don't know. Sometimes things like that also work from the other direction. So that's how I think about it. But yeah, I think just a lot of people were very curious about the whole change, supposedly.
Well, so if you look at the Modi supporters, okay, so they love to have this the map, okay, so they call it the Akhand Bharat map, and if you look at the map, it will includes Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Tibet, Burma, Bangladesh. Okay, so they want, so they have this the fantasy now that India is a superpower, and I don't know what they're thinking. Okay, so maybe the message is that one day India is going to conquer with these the neighboring nations, 7, 8 nations around us. So I don't know what kind of mad things are going on in the heads of these people. But this is another a classic example of how nobody in India knows geopolitics. Like people say but crazy things like we are a superpower. No, we're not a superpower. Okay, we have a GDP per capita of $2,600 per year. Okay, this is not a superpower. And if you look at the military in India, like 75% of the planes and the tanks are from Russia. Okay, and then the rest are all like mostly from France and from the US. Okay, and we cannot even like make our own medicines. Like 75% of the raw materials for the medicines in India, they will come from China. Okay, so what kind of a superpower is that? And if you look at the mobile phones, the appliances, the cars, everything in India is all foreign products. Okay, the most of them, like maybe 75 to 80% of all the smart mobiles, washing machines, dryers, cars, they're all foreign brands. And if the US wants, they can shut down the whole the Indian economy in just one day. Okay, the whole software, hardware, all the stuff in India, they're all from the US. Okay, so like I have to use, the Amazon to buy things, Google Pay and WhatsApp, fintech, e-commerce, everything runs on foreign products. And if we get into a fight with the US, they have a switch, and they can just go click, and that's it. The whole the Indian economy will be ruined. Okay, so we're not a superpower. We're not a Bharat who are going to conquer Pakistan, Tibet, Burma, Nepal, Sri Lanka. Guys, just focus on the reality. Stop smoking things you should not be smoking. One step at a time. Baby steps. Maybe 20 years from now we can be a superpower, but just now, just focus on the basics.
Well, why do you think that the West, is it India that keeps themselves kind of trapped in this without manufacturing sector, or is it the West that's keeping it? Because I was recently watching a video. This may be not even be true, or I don't know, but it was Warren Buffett's, one of his associates, and he was saying how difficult it is to get stuff done in India. And that's the reason for that is being that he said, and this is kind of hyperbolic, but he said they've taken all of the worst parts of Western democracy and put it into their government and just like turned it all the way up. And he was talking about, India has this really low grade coal and really low grade iron ore. And then South Korea found a way to turn that into steel. And I tried to get India to send it there. And then somebody protested and I never got it done. And it was like, he's like 40 years later and I still haven't gotten it done. And I just don't know how to do business in India. So is it both? Is it the West kind of like, okay, cool, let's keep them kind of into this like trade cycle, this kind of trade trap, but India's also not really doing itself any favors? Is that an accurate assessment?
I would say it's both. I would say it's both because India was brought under neoliberal policies. I mean, throughout the later half of the 80s, India was getting prepared for neoliberal policies, which involved, deregulation, which involved liberalization. That's so the whole process of the whole traps of neoliberal policies are absolutely there. It's there. And on the other side, India is not able to industrialize. I mean, it's very sorry, but India is not able to industrialize, largely because it's still very feudal. It's rural India is still it's a semi-feudal country. So the relations between the productive forces are still not developed, and that requires heavy commitment. It requires like educating the people to become skilled labor. It requires heavy investment. It requires land reforms. None of these things are being done. There is no ability of the current ruling class to do any of these things. So it's just, because it doesn't benefit them. So I would say it's both. I would agree with you. Yeah.
But also to kind of compliment you a bit and to I guess again I'm going to be the devil's advocate this whole stream, I feel like. But recently we Russians, we tried to land on the moon. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for us, but it worked out for you, and we're happy for you. But that's that's another thing, which shows that India, in some respects, is actually very advanced. And I hate to admit it a little bit, but even more advanced than us. And we're pretty good with space things. So I feel like there's on one hand, it's what you say that India still has a ways to go, but then at the same time, it has some very impressive achievements in other areas.
Well, we are very good in laptop jobs. Okay, so you put an Indian before a laptop, he will do great things. Okay, and then you ask him to fix like the smallest thing, like a broken chair or fix the car. No, he can't do it. So like we don't do the handsy stuff. We're all into the brainy but talks. So that's sort of the cultural thing. So I will look around myself. There are so many things from the auto rickshaws to soaps, and they haven't changed in like 40 years. Okay, they use the same design, the same logo, the same marketing slogan, the colors. Nobody thinks, hey man, it's been 40 years. Do you think we can change this like one color maybe? Nah, it's too much work. Why fix something if it ain't broken? And so this is so shocking for me, because if you travel around the world and you see how fast things are changing, you look at the Chinese cars now. Oh my God! All they have is with two pads. The iPad, and but that's all you need to control the cars. And if you come to India, it's like the same stick shift that first was invented by Ford like
They're
100
trained.
years ago. Yeah, exactly. So we have to crank it. It's like nobody cares about, like for example, the Japanese, they have a term, I forgot it, and it basically means a small improvement. Okay, and that's how the Japanese, went from a totally a destroyed nation in 1945, and by 1965, they were making cars far better than the U.S. or uh, Europe, because they had this concept where they would make small improvements every day. Like just like say 1% improvement in the process, in the design, in the engineering, in the efficiency, performance, and so on. Just 1% per day, and then 1 year later, like you have a brand new, amazing product, right? And that's what we need in India.
But then I can also see, because actually, I feel like as a Russian, I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying, but I can kind of see both sides. Because it's sort of very similar to how our society sees, because we've come a long way in a lot of respects, technologically, economically, and just basically in every way imaginable, because we were in big trouble in the 90s. And so we have kind of two mindsets, where one category of Russians, they well, to kind of put it very frankly, nothing is ever good enough for them. So they always say whatever we achieve, they always say, but look, but do we have buildings like in Dubai? But do we have this? Do we have that? And so whatever, they tend to minimize every achievement that we have. And then there is another group of Russians who always say, but we're not there, but baby steps, we'll get there. And so just again, from having some conversations with the Indians, I can see why some people get very defensive when they hear criticism of their country, because they do see progress. Maybe and that's actually maybe why they react very emotionally to when their country gets criticized, because they can see that there are definitely great things that are being achieved. Maybe not at the speed that we would like to see them, but they're still happening. And so when they see the criticism, it kind of hurts them, because they feel like people don't recognize all the great things that India is doing. But just looking from the outside, I think that for the size of the country and the diversity that exists in India, India is doing very impressive things. And just it's India is in a very complicated position, I feel like, geopolitically, but I think that this is what makes it interesting. It's a lot of outside things to balance, a lot of inside things to balance, kind of like Russia.
I mean,
Yeah.
see, go ahead, Asa.
No.
No,
Go
I mean,
ahead.
see, I would say that considering how diverse the country is, the fact that it's extremely diverse. The fact that it's come so far is, I guess, it's impressive. It's impressive, yes. I mean, but there, I mean, at one point, I think, like, as an Indian, and I am a very nationalistic Indian. As an Indian, you need to let go of delusions of grandeur to some extent. I think a lot of criticism is basically coming because of such delusions of grandeur being there in the environment. I think that's where a lot of it is coming from. If we are more on the ground and maybe like analyze things from a more realistic perspective, it's not doing bad. That's my opinion. Yeah, it's not doing bad. It's nowhere close to the potential that India has, considering the geographical location of India is absolutely amazing. It has more arable land than any other country in the world. It's located, the entire peninsula is located in the Indian Ocean, very, very strategic, strategic location. So it I just think that the potential is not being met.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so you can lead a very casual life. Okay. Like, for example, if you go to Jamaica, they take their time. They're like wonderful, happy people. You go to get a lunch and you place an order and you get the lunch in about 45 minutes. Okay. And that's your choice. If you want to be, slow and be happy, okay, that's fine, but you're going to be left behind. We live in a very, very rapid world. And so nobody is going to say, oh, so I'm going to buy like an Indian car because they're such wonderful spiritual people. No, they're going to say, man, I'm going to buy the Chinese car. It's like so much more advanced. And you guys are like 30 years behind, right? So like, this is the reality. And so you have to choose what your path is, right? So like so yes, so compared to some other countries, we've had a steady growth, so it's all about, who you are comparing yourself with and what's your goal, so if you want to be slow and steady and be poor for, forever, then just be so, but if you want to be the Vishwa Guru, somebody who is going to teach the world, then you better back up your claims, right? So, as I'll tell you, I think one of the big awakening is that, how did Canada find out about who was guilty in the murder of the Sikh separatists? So, based on the leaks, it appears that Canada has solid evidence of the Indian diplomat or somebody in Canada being behind the murder. So how did they get that? Like through spying. And the media says the spying was done by who? One of the Five Eyes country. Okay, that's not Canada.
Probably the UK.
Or the US. It's but right next door. The CIA is so close to the Canadian border. So, so what the Five Eyes do is that they spy on each other to circumvent the constitutional and the legal troubles. So if say Barack Obama's team, they wanted to spy on Trump, then they cannot call the FBI and the CIA and say, hey, so tap the phone of the candidate. Okay, they cannot do that. But then what they can do is to leverage their the Five Eyes, the connection with the British, and then the British will spy on Trump. Okay, so the similar stuff is happening in Canada. Okay, so now this is going to be a wake-up call for Indians. You know why? Because the infrastructure in India is fully based on Western technology. Okay, so we use the 5G is fully built by Nokia and by Ericsson, and all the cloud information in India is stored on the Amazon cloud. And all the routers we use are from Cisco. And people use Gmail, and people use the iPhones. Okay, so now just imagine, okay, somebody is going to wake up and say and ask, what kind of spying is the NSA doing in India? Okay, and that's going to blow their mind when they start to think like that.
Well, I mean, just to push back a little bit, the way that I think about it is from a USA perspective. So when Canada was saying, India assassinated this guy, and I was like, so what? You guys do that like every other Tuesday. You assassinate like a political operative in another country. Not that it makes it right, but it's like, what are we doing here? Like, that's the amount of cynicism I approach it with. It's horrible. Somebody died, but who are you to say anything about anything? Like, Canada, of all places, standing ovation for Zelensky, and now they're criticizing something about a political operative. With they say they have proof. Who knows if they have proof? They can fabricate whatever they want. It's just another way to try to like paint India as like this backwards place, and we have their Sikhs here and we're trying to protect them, and they're safe. They're not even safe here from these horrible Indians. They're everywhere, so it's like it plays. Is there an Indophobia? Is there such thing as Indophobia? But it just makes India seem even more like foreign, and they're not like us, guys. They're not like us. See, they're not like us. They come in here and they hurt the people that we're trying to protect. And I feel like, and since you brought up the trade and everything, I feel like it's a way, and we're all the way full circle now. Like BlueBird brought up blackmail. It's a way to blackmail. I have your trade. You don't manufacture anything. I'm accusing you of killing somebody in my country. And now the United States comes out and says, we support Canada in this argument, whatever it is. And it's like, does India have to kowtow? Does India have to capitulate? Or like what choices does India have? And then with that, I kind of want to segue into BRICS, because can India, is this a catalyst for some sort of actual breakaway? Maybe I'm too hopeful, I think, but but is this like a catalyst for some sort of like rift in the Western India relations? And does India have anywhere else to turn?
Okay, so that's actually a very, very good point. And so people need to think more about it. So BlueBird, she hit the nail on the head by focusing on the blackmail part. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, and this is a very good learning experience for the Indian foreign policy establishment and others. So the way the trap works is like, for example, if you go back to 1990s, what the U.S. did was to tell, Kuwait to start making troubles for the Iraq, neighbor. Okay, so then Saddam Hussein was so pissed off. So then he called up the U.S. ambassador who was stationed in Baghdad, and he said, "Hey, so the little country Kuwait is doing a lot of shenanigans. They're like drilling our oil and causing trouble in the border. So what is your take on it? What is the position of the U.S.?" And the U.S. ambassador in Iraq, she told him, "Well, we don't care. Okay, so we don't care what you do because we are too busy with a lot of other things, and it's your business to deal with Kuwait." Okay, and that was a trap, right? So Saddam Hussein, he fell for the trap, and then he went into Kuwait, and he was immediately demonized, and then the whole thing. Okay, so so my guess is this is how the trap happened here, right? So first of all, but Canada is very naughty. It's like one of those the designated the Anglo-American the empire vassal, and they hold dissidents from all over the world. From Syria, from India, from China. They love to harass the developing
Nazis.
nations.
They also have a
Yeah.
good
I think there was a point of time when Canada used to train insurgencies also. Like they had some law. I don't remember exactly what the law was, but there was a law which was passed later. Like insurgency training used to be a thing in Canada at one point. Like LTT, every insurgencies in the world could be trained in Canada at one point.
Right. Okay. So now, the U.S. Laid the perfect trap for India. Okay. So like some CIA guy or the National Security Agency, they come to Delhi. They go, man, India, we feel your pain. Uh, but listen, so we have all these, strategies, but techniques. We can help you get rid of one or two guys, and but nobody will care. So then the Indian guys get all excited. They go, "Wow, man, we got the okay from the CIA. We're so cool." And then they go and but carry it out, and then that CIA person may not even know, but the second CIA person is doing all the recording. He's recording the phone calls. He's making videos. He's keeping track of the emails and the chats. So they build up the evidence, just like a lawyer, they build, so they're slowly building the evidence. Okay. And now they're going, okay. And now the US has a leverage, right? So, but now they can come to Modi and say, well, listen, we're not saying we're going to release it, but there is this other guy who really wants to release it. But if you can do us some favor regarding Russia, so buy a little bit less oil. Okay, so don't support Russia in the UN, and but China, start another little stuff on the border, and BRICS. Okay, so don't let the BRICS, to grow and to expand. You are big India. Okay, you should have the veto power. So there's but some sort of blackmail will be leveraged, with all this evidence. And if the Indian government follows the order, then those evidences will slowly disappear. The media will forget about it. But if will India resist, so they will keep fueling the fire. Okay, I mean it'll be like a drip, drip, drip. Once a week, there will be a damning bombshell. Brand new evidence. Like just think of like the COVID, right? So they ran, for 2-3 years, they ran the COVID scam against the Wuhan lab. So they'll do the same thing for India.
You touched on BRICS, but I did want to. We just recently did an episode on Iran, and I found out something that I wasn't aware of that kind of made me think of it, is that India was responsible for Iran's entry into BRICS, but I didn't know that. And maybe we can explore that a little bit, and you guys can tell our listeners maybe more about India-Iran relations, and maybe why at the same time India was also blamed for blocking the expansion. So two things happening at once.
I think when it comes to Iran, like Iran is a country India needs to have very good relationships with. It is in India's interest for India to have very, very good relations with Iran.
Well,
That's
here's
because
why
Iran has, huh?
it confuses and makes sense to me. One, because Iran keeps Saudi in check, and that in turn keeps Pakistan in check in a way because of those historical relations. But India has a close relationship with Israel.
I
So
mean,
how
I mean, it's. I mean, that's how geopolitics works sometimes, right? Like we don't live in a. We live in a world where interests.
yeah,
There can be differing interests.
right.
So the thing with Iran is that, like, when it comes to Indian economy, the one thing that India really, really, really does not have is energy independence, right? And the one country which has all the energy in the world, the oil, the gas, and it's right next to India, is Iran. And historically, like even before, like post World War II, Iran has always been a very important partner for India. So so when it comes to Iran, it's in India's interest to have Iran in BRICS because India wants to have gas deals with Iran. There was a proposed gas deal with Iran in 2008. For me, that's actually one of the uh, monumental pivots of Indian geopolitical history, because that 2008 is when India signed the Indo-US Civil Nuclear Pact instead of taking up the gas pipeline with Iran, which, in my opinion, leads to non-proliferation and is a mistake. But so when it comes to Iran, it's in India's interest. I think what they're referring to when they're saying that India is blocking expansion, I think they're referring to Algeria's membership, which there are rumors that Algeria's membership was actually blocked by India because of India's relationship with France. There are some defense deals with France that goes on. So I think that's where it's coming from. SL, you want to say something on this?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also there is, the Russia to India. I mean, the corridor. There's a huge thing
It's
going
the
on.
north-south corridor through Caspian Sea to Iran, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there are lots of benefits, and yeah, well, Iran is a very, very important partner, and the U.S. actually stopped a lot of the projects. So India was supposed to build this the Chabahar seaport, which was supposed to compete with the Chinese seaport in Pakistan. And then the US came and said, no, you cannot build a port in Iran. So they sabotaged it. And but now it's going to happen, and especially with BRICS. But again, if well, India had very good relations with China, then they could actually partner with China in building the Chabahar port. Because what takes India about 10 years, the Chinese will do it in 1 year. Okay, so
You're so critical of, I know you're critical of India because you want it to get better, but I mean, can't an argument be made that India is still relatively young, like in terms of governing itself? And I mean, it still is suffering from the fallout of colonialism in
come on. What is this? Colonialism.
China, People's
The
Republic.
British, those British, they did this. This is like, hey man, why didn't you show up to work at 9 in the morning? It's the British.
Stop.
They really ruined my great grandfather's habit to go to work at 9 in the morning. And
I
then
mean,
this, being late just got passed on from my great grandfather to my father to me. I cannot show up to work before 11 o'clock. It's the damn British.
but I mean, isn't there still remnants of that in a way? I mean, there's still remnants of that in a lot of former British colonies. We see it throughout Africa. I mean,
I
India
mean,
is it is so funny because every time we do an India episode, we're like, all right, guys, brace yourselves. We're going to do an India episode because no matter what, at least one group of Indians is going to be pissed off. So now this is my fourth Indian episode. So guys, don't worry. We cover all facets of India. We just got it. There's a lot of you. We got to get through each one. But like, how do we kind of rectify the two or rationalize the two together? Like India won its independence in the 20th century, so it's like, I mean, and Russia can still uses some of those excuses as the 90s, and that's not.
It's not an excuse, please. It's a very real thing.
Reasoning.
Okay, so listen. Okay, so I mean, this is my solution. Okay, so once a week, the Indians can would choose their day. Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and they go to a psychologist. Okay, so once a day we go to. I mean, once a week we go to a psychologist, and we talk to the psychologist for an hour about how the British and the Muslims, they really ruined our country. Okay, that's fine. If that's what it takes to get your ass to work on Monday morning, do it.
Are you guys sure you weren't colonized by the United States? That's a very United States. It's a very American outlook. My past is the reason why I'm hurting now. That's how we are.
But the attitude is very Asian because, see, as a Russian, I actually relate to a lot of the, I guess, Asian things because I feel like we're very tough love, in that sense. And so I understand, to kind of, sum it up, I understand your feelings because I feel like people with your position get a lot of hate from the Indian community because maybe they don't see it the same way. Like I said, they get, and maybe rightfully so, we can understand they get defensive, but also I guess what I'm trying to say is it's the same line of thought that I have when talking to Russians that have different views from mine. I try to keep in mind that me and them, we are ultimately on the same page where we want our country to succeed. We might see the path to that differently, and I feel like it's very important for for Russians and also for Indians to keep in mind that uh, yeah, we just want the same things. We want our country to grow. We want our country to develop, and we might criticize it because I think that sometimes people think that if you criticize some things about your country, you're not patriotic, which I don't find the case. I don't find it to be the case. I think that it's healthy to recognize that there is room for improvement, but it's also kind of important to be positive about some things. And I think that India definitely has a very bright future, and just the same, as Russia does. Hopefully, that's what I'm hoping for. And I think that one of the paths to that hopefully is BRICS. And actually, I wanted to I guess ask you about BRICS from kind of a different side because, again, we get some people in the comments who say things like, Russia should be friends with China and India cannot be trusted. And then we have some people, China will stab Russia in the back the second it gets the opportunity. Russia needs to stay close to India because India has been a good friend for years. And so and I guess where a lot of people agree is that India is a little bit of this, black horse in BRICS. It's this part of BRICS that people have a lot of questions about. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you see India's role in BRICS, and how do you see in relation to Russia. And I guess what would you even say to the people who kind of have their doubts about what India's plans are about BRICS and its position in regards to it?
So BlueBird, do you want to go first, and then I'll go?
Sure. Sure. So, I mean, when it comes to BRICS, I think the agenda has always been, having a currency, common currency for trade. So, which is currently in the agenda of BRICS, and also one of the other agendas was like to provide funding for developmental projects, right? Which is the reason why the new development bank was established sometime in 2014, 2015. I don't remember the exact year. So, from that perspective, when it comes to India's trade with other BRICS nations, I think it's in India's interest to have such a currency. It is so how India's position, India's relationship with BRICS pans out over the future is dependent upon a lot of things. It depends. It's heavily dependent upon how which direction India's foreign policy takes. So, with respect to Russia, I think it's safe to say that India and Russia has had a stellar relationship from the 1950s, from 1960s, definitely from 1950s onwards. I would say even earlier than that. So Russia is a time-tested partner for India, and for Russia, I would like to say it this way: at this point, when Russia is facing a crisis from the Western world, India is not able to provide Russia with the economic support that Russia needs, while China is able to do that, which is why Russia-China relationship getting strengthened is inevitable. I don't think India will ever have a bad relationship with Russia. I don't see that happening. There is a potential for things going. I mean, even right now, relationship with China is very shaky, and that again comes back to how the Indian economy is doing. The reason why the entire conflict between, or the shaky relationship that is there between India and China, it's not about border issues. It ultimately comes down to defining the spheres of influence. I think I would say it, I would phrase it like that. 1980s India was a regional power. It had influence in almost all the South Asian countries. It's slowly losing its position as a regional power, and China is able to exert influence in India's sphere of influence. This is primarily the conflict between India and China, and this is gonna, and the right with the rise of China, the exponential rise of China, China exerting influence in the Indian Ocean, China exerting influence in the Indo-China region, China exerting influence in South Asia is natural. It's very natural. It's just that India's economic issues prevents India from investing that level of capital in South Asian countries, which India considers as India's sphere of influence. So there is a maritime rivalry going on. There is so basically it's about defining spheres of influence, which is going to go through a shaky path. So at one point it's about, will India accept China's dominance in the Indian Ocean or resist it? Because India's foreign policy with respect to BRICS will depend upon India's decision to accept or resist China's growth and China's exertion of influence in South Asia. So I would say it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah. Yes. So BlueBird, she hit the nail on the head. Okay, so she knows more geopolitics than all the mainstream media in India put together. Okay. So the spheres of influence is a big part, and it's very natural, right? So China's economy is like 6 times larger, 5 to 6 times larger, and they have so much more money to throw around. So then obviously you have, oops, can you folks hear me?
I can hear you, SL.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so China has a lot of, wealth, and they can do very concrete things, right? They can go build the infrastructure in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Burma, Laos, blah, blah, blah. And they have the money, they have the capability. And so then obviously these countries are going to move closer to China. And, so one way is for India to become like one of those countries, right? So if Nepal is a friend of China, if Sri Lanka is a friend of China, then India can also become a friend of China. But I think psychologically, India was so used to having China as an equal, right? So they both got independence in 1947, 1949, right? It's at the same time. And if you go to 1989 or 1991, the GDP per capita, I mean, in India was actually larger than that in China. Okay, just but 30 years ago, we were richer than China. And if you go take a look at the photos of the Indian cities and the Chinese cities from 1992, they look the same. The roads, the buses, the buildings, they all look the same. And then there was this the astronomical growth, but but for both the American psychology and the Indian psychology, they have a very hard time with accepting this new China, right? I mean, I see on social media the Americans are still stuck in the 1990s. Okay, they have no idea about the new China, and
No.
whatever photo you show them, whatever videos you show them, whatever statistics you show them, it does not go into their into their head. It's like it's like a cognitive dissonance. They're like, no, this must be fake. No, this cannot be. So, they cannot have such beautiful skyscrapers. They're all going to fall tomorrow. Trust me. And India also has. I mean, certainly. Okay, so the U.S. doesn't plan anything for its own people. Okay, the American ruling class, they never plan anything for the Americans, but they plan a lot for, the empire. Okay, I mean, they plan 20, 30 years ahead as how to contain Russia, how to contain China. That they spend a lot of time planning. So what they did with India is they saw the potential. Okay, so they knew that there are like a lot of really smart Indians. So they're like, okay, So they started in 1992. As soon as the globalization began, they started to import the Indian programmers and the developers and so on. So they slowly built this the goodwill. So you take a guy from the developing nation, he's making $500 a month, and you give him a $200,000 a year job, he's gonna love you, okay? And then the brain just shuts off automatically. You cannot think properly. So they groomed all these Indians. They got them into the IMF, the World Bank's new chief is an Indian. The CEO of Google, Microsoft, blah blah. So they really developed the goodwill, and they groomed the next generation of the elites in India. And so this is a standard practice for the empires, right? So the British, they got Gandhi, Nehru to study in London, because if like you bring those people, you groom them, and then they become your friend, right? And then they cannot but think otherwise. So that's how they were able to capture the Indian, the elites. So if you look at the media, the mainstream media in India, they just copy paste, from Reuters, Bloomberg, AP. Like there's no the original thinking. Like what BlueBird said, you won't find in the think tank white papers in India. They just make it very simple, black and white, that the villagers can understand. China steal land, China bad. Okay, so that's something everybody can understand. Okay, so you don't need to go to school, and you don't need like an education to understand that somebody who steals your land is a bad person. So there's no the complexity in geopolitics, and so we'll see. I mean, I think that as like if the BRICS expands, I think there might be a lot of other members who would be able to talk to the Indian elites and would discuss a new framework, a multipolar world, like where you have a lot of security and the cooperation, and maybe they can, find and I mean even mediate between China and India, hopefully.
That is a great thought. And I think that we can all agree that even if we don't understand exactly everything that is going on with India politics, it is definitely a very, very important country for the world, and especially in this new multipolar world that we have shaping up. And we want to thank you so much for being with us and for giving us your perspectives, because it's always very interesting to hear. And don't forget to drop us a like and subscribe on YouTube and on Rumble. And of course, join us on our Telegram channel. We work really hard every day to bring you great news, and we try to do it fast. And I think that we're doing a pretty good job. And to give you a taste of what's coming on Tuesday evening, Moscow time, we have a very, very special live stream from Donetsk with a group of English-speaking locals, lawyers, human rights defenders, journalists. So you will have a very unique opportunity to learn about how things are on the ground, and we're looking forward to it. And we will post about it the exact time on all of our platforms, so don't miss it.
Thank you both so much for coming. Now I have to go defend myself against whatever faction of Indians we've pissed off this time. It's all right. I gotta go. I'll double up on my I Love India posts this week. I did an episode 2 weeks ago, and I had to do it then, so don't even worry about it. Any closing thoughts from either of you guys?
Well, no, I'm so glad to have met BlueBird. And so she's the sort of the future that India needs.
You're the future, BlueBird.
Oh my God. I mean,
no pressure. No pressure.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sarah, for having us on. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, SL, for coming. I think everyone loves hearing you all the time.
Awesome. All right, folks. Thank you. Bye.